A historic moment for the NA West region happened in this season's FNCS finals, where the kings of Epik, Whale, Arkhram and Rex were finally dethroned, and Reet, Snacky and Fabs ended up winning the championship title on the region. However, they all split, which to an outsider doesn't really make that much sense, but there's obviously a lot more to it. Credit, source, this guy right here basically said that Rex doesn't actually practice that much and only really plays the tournaments, and that he was going to quit after Grand Royale anyway. So that trio disbanded, and they've picked up Reet instead. Apologies if any of that's not correct, I don't follow the NA West region that closely. The first weekend of them playing together as an official trio went down an absolute blast. They placed 13th on NA East, first in NA West, and second on the Asia, all cash cups as well. This is actually the first NA West Trios Cup that they've all played together. However, they did all play together in the Epik Whale Squads Cup as well. They also play a ton of the Asia Cash Cups together, which they've won once and ended up placing second twice in, and they've played duos with each other. So this team does have a lot of experience with each other already. There's no doubt that on the NA West region, there'll basically be no trio that should be able to contest them, and they could continue to go on an absolute dominant run, whatever FNCS or tournaments are going to be next year. But with rumours of them potentially moving to NA East for Grand Royale, that actually posed up a question for me. Should they switch region permanently? Well, let's firstly look at this for Grand Royale. Should they and can they switch region? They can actually switch region. So if you qualified for the Grand Royale, you can switch region. There was some DMs shared on Twitter of another user from a different region. I can't remember who it was. Apologies. Moving to, I think it was NA East, and speaking to an Epik employee, and they allowed them to switch regions. Remember, the first stage of the Grand Royale is basically an opens level tournament anyway. There's roughly 700 teams across each region originally. So it's not like you're switching regions just to make it straight through to like a 33-man lobby. You're just kind of making it through to a round 1 or equivalent round 2. So let's look at the total prize pools for Grand Royale specifically first. EU is $2.25 million, NA East is $1.055, and then NA West is just shy of $400,000. So you can see as the prize pool in NA East is 2.64 times larger, and EU is 5.64 times larger, so substantially larger prize pools than NA West. So the winning prize pool for the Grand Royale on West is $105,000. So obviously that's going to be split across your team, but let's just keep it as a full team number for so far. So that's roughly equivalent to going on to EU and placing 5th, which will be $120,000, or on NA East, you're going to place 3rd for $126,000. Now obviously winning's not guaranteed, or placing anywhere is not guaranteed, but this is just to equate that placement to what it would be on other regions financially. Now the question is, would they be able to hit these thresholds? Personally, I think this team could be good on any region, on any season, on LAN, not on LAN, whatever it is. Arkhram and Epik Whale have proven themselves to be good on LAN, in particular back to World Cup. And Reet is yet to prove himself in that environment, but he's basically proven himself in every other tournament on every other region possible. So I do believe there's a possibility that for Grand Royale, these guys could easily make these thresholds and have a shot at winning. Now the biggest difficulty is, can they get a drop spot uncontested? Well, for them, their drop spot of choice has been Believers Beach. So you have to look at each individual region and say, for NA East, could they get Believers Beach uncontested? Well, the teams that are landing there right now, unless they've all split, we'll come to that later, appears to be Canada's new team, and also Sprite's team, obviously when it was Gabe Tahi Sprite, or Sprite Tahi Clicks, that's just been this season. Honestly, for Clicks' team, they have been really poor this season. Yes, they managed to make it through. So there is potential for them not to qualify for the finals of Grand Royale, and the Epik Whales team would be able to get this uncontested, but we know if that team qualifies that the early game fights are going to be rough. But I would bet that switching to NA East, they could manage to get this drop spot uncon. And with Canada's team, I'm not sure if they're just trying Believers Beach as a drop spot or if they're fully committed to it. But if a team like Epik Whale moved there, I honestly think it'd be really tough to beat off Epik Whale's team off spawn, in particular now with that firepower from Reet. So I do think a lot of these teams would be smarter not to contest them here. However, let's be real, Canada's team was contesting in finals day 1 so far against Illust's team, and then ended up disengaging, so it's a bit up in the air. So I would say that these guys have a larger chance of getting this drop spot uncontested in a finals, and that they could actually place in the top 5 as well. So for me, I think it's 100% worth switching to NA East for Grand Royale specifically. Now coming to EU, no. They're not getting this drop spot. There are so many teams looking at Believers Beach, and it's really rough on EU to try and alpha up basically any other drop spot either. If you just look anywhere around the map, all of these have been taken by top level teams, and I highly doubt a team from EU would put the respect on an NA West team, despite the fact that I think they could easily be a top 5 EU team. to give them a drop spot uncontested. So do I think they should move to EU, and could I guarantee that they place top 5? Almost definitely not. Plus, you've got to add the logistics of moving internationally in comparison to just moving state for a couple of weeks, still staying within NA. That's Grand Royale, but what about next year? What about for the foreseeable future? Well, obviously right now, we don't really know what's actually happening next year. So let's do 2 different scenarios. Let's do one where we assume everything is still online and it's just the same as this year. Please, I hope that's not the case. But if it was 4 FNCSs in the year with the same prize pools we've just had throughout Season 8's one. And just for the sake of discussion, let's just assume that the map's relatively the same as well. For the regular FNCS, a win on NA West is $48,000, split obviously across your 3 teammates. You can see the rest of the prize pool there as well. What they ended up doing this year, when it was Rex instead of Reet on the team, was that they had 3 firsts and a second. Not too bad if you ask me, which if we kept that same prize pool from this FNCS specifically, it would be $178,500. So just shy of $180,000. Now, if they moved east, you'd have to figure out what the equivalent of that would be. Now, there are a couple of scenarios you could set up, but basically they would need to win 1 FNCS, which would be $135,000, and place 6th in one other, and then do no others finals performances to make $180,000. Or you could do 4 FNCSs where you place 5th to 6th every single one, and that would roughly equate to the same amount. Now, I asked Twitter, what do you think is more difficult? Winning 3 NA West FNCSs and placing 2nd once, or winning 1 NA East FNCS and placing 6th in another and having horrible placements in 2 more of them? I had to think about this pretty hard, but I do think for this team, they absolutely have the potential to be able to win 1 FNCS over on East and place top 6 in 1 other FNCS, or just be 5th to 6th in all 4 of them. Not a guarantee by any means, because nothing is guaranteed when it comes to Fortnite competitive, but I do believe that they have the power and the potential to be able to do this. I do believe that they would be able to get an uncontested drop spot in at least some of the FNCS finals to be able to perform like this. So if FNCS was all online next year, similar to the way it was in this year, I actually do believe that moving east could be the way forward. You got to remember, you got to add all the cash cup money to that as well. That there's larger prize pools in East rather than being on West. You could play EU cash cups rather than playing Asia cash cups as one of your off-region ones. But obviously, this is just a financial side of things. There's family side of things, implications on that too. Finding places to live. Lots of other different things which will impact the decision to move. But just strictly financially, I actually do believe that it would benefit this team to move over to East, or at least to try. Now, let's say next year is different. Remember what Epik has said so far in one of the blogs, that they're not going to do lands until at least the 2nd quarter of next year, which essentially would be April onwards. Since we've had 0 information about what next year's going to hold for us, let's just assume that next year's really different and that there are big international competitions, such as the World Cup. I'd be so sad if there wasn't a World Cup, man. Now for this, the outcome's definitely different. So let's look at what a trio World Cup, again assuming it's still trios, I know a lot of people want otherwise, what kind of the distribution, how many players from each region may end up going to the finals. Now remember, the last World Cup only had 6 regions because Middle East wasn't included at that time. And a lot of the split was very, very different. But if we purely look at the prize pool split and how it's split per region, and just replicate this as to how many teams or players will go to the finals, this is how it ends up looking out. Now, if this was actually how it was going to be, I don't think this would be very representative, because I would love to obviously see more than one OCE and Middle East team there. But this is just purely reflecting of the prize pool. And remember, that prize pool reflects the player base. So obviously EU having a way larger player base than NA East and all the other regions, so they get more money. So let's just assume that this would be how it was done. Again, I'm not necessarily saying this is how it should be done, but just for the topic of this conversation, 3 teams from NA West and 7 from NA East would qualify for a big international. So if you're looking at Epik Whale, Arkhram and Reet and are thinking, which one would you guarantee you a slot to an international? Top 3 at NA West or top 7 in NA East? I know which one of those I'm picking. Without a doubt, they would get a top 3 in NA West. It would be almost unbelievable if they didn't manage to qual and take a top 3, given the performances that we've seen all of this year. But with NA East, could you really say that you're guaranteeing them a top 7 slot, that there's not going to be 7 teams that are better than them on that region or will perform better than them? I'm not sure I could confidently say that. Even though I would say that they are definitely a top 5 team if they move to this region, I'm not saying I could guarantee them a top 7 slot. So for looking at qualifications to large internationals, it would to me make more sense that if there was this big tournament announced, that they actually just stay on West, play for potentially smaller prize pools throughout the year, but bet on making that qualification through to a big international and obviously doing well like they have previously. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned a lot. Peace.